Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Great Leadership. My guest today, Simon De Baene. He's the co-founder and CEO at Workleap. And today we're going to be covering a few different topics, assuming we can get to all of them. So first, the story of Workleap is quite fascinating and interesting as far as how the company went through several iterations. I read that there was one point online where you had to quote unquote kill your darlings and sacrifice a profitable service business to focus kind of on the product side, which I'm really interested in. We'll talk about some of the top employee experience trends that are out there, frameworks that you use for decision making, because I think one of the things a lot of people struggle with as they grow in size and scale is how do you keep the innovation and kind of that playfulness that's so crucial for a smaller company, but also balancing that with the structure of an established larger scale company. We'll talk about innovation a little bit, the importance for leaders to delegate things and not try to, do everything themselves, which I know a lot of people struggle with. And then I'm also curious how you learned to lead, because you've been running this company for many years now. So a lot of leaders out there never go through formal leadership training. They have to pick it up from books, from coaches, from mentors. So I'm curious to hear your story on that as well. So having said all that, Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. So it seems like we have plenty of things to talk about.
Yes, we do. So first question is, can you give us a little bit of background information about the company? So where you came from, where you are now, how many employees you have. One fun tidbit I read is that your company used to be called GSoft, named after G Unit. I don't know if that's true or not. So I thought I'd have to ask you about that. But what's the story of Workleap?
Yeah. So I can confirm that it's really coming from GUnit. The company called GSoft at the time was founded in 2006. We were three friends, Sebastian and Guillaume. Met Sebastian when I was much younger. It's the kind of friends where the teacher and the class were putting us on each side of the room to make sure we don't speak to each other.
Oh, my daughter has that situation right now in her school. She's 7, and she has a best friend there, and the teacher is constantly sending me emails and notifications. I can't separate them. They're always together. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I know exactly what that's like.
But with Sebastian, every time there was like someone replacing the teacher, like for a day or two, like was giving a note to make sure we're not sitting next to each other. So it was like a very good friend. And then I met Guillaume on the first day of university, and we just, I don't know, felt like we could build a long-lasting relationship. From in 2006, after a year in university, when we were 20 years old, decided to start a company. At the same time, my father was starting again as another company. He had like a tech company a few years before that he sold to CGI, which is like kind of a large service IT company.
Yeah, I know CGI. I had what's her name? Julie Golden on the podcast. I think she's a EVP or one of the executives there. I think it's a family business, right?
Yeah. So you met Julie Godin.
Yeah. I had her on the show a little while ago.
Yeah, it's a family business, but it's a massive public company.
Huge.
That was founded in Quebec City, if I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he sold this company to CGI, stayed there a few years, and then started as another company in 2006. And when I saw that, I was like, it seems like a cool thing to do, like building a company. Like it felt like the right thing to kind of do something with my life. I hated school. I didn't really belong in school. I wanted to do something with my life right now. And it was the same for Guillaume and Sebastian. And from our 20 years old with absolutely no experience, no life experience, no job experience, we decided to start GSoft. And at the time, the original idea is that we were at this, like, from I think 17 years old to 20, I was working at CGI in the support, the call center. And it was kind of my first immersion in the IT world. I was kind of seeing what it looked like to be working in tech. And I was supporting a lot of other companies in Quebec for all their systems that we're using. I was the guy you're calling when you have a problem during the weekend. And I just felt that the IT world in Quebec was very gray, like the gray carpet, gray cubicles, gray mood. It just felt like the craziness that we're seeing in Silicon Valley was not yet arrived in Quebec. So we wanted to bring a breath of fresh air in the IT scene in Quebec. And that was enough for us to say, like, let's start a company. And at the same time, we were listening a lot of GUnit and just decided to call it GSoft. And that's it. We went to the accounting company they gave us like a big black book. It's like this is where you're supposed to track all the decision that the board is making. But the day we received that big book, it's like, okay, that's real. Like we have we have everything to run that business. And it's like, okay, so what are we doing? So we started the company as a service company. We were just building different tailor-made software for different companies around Quebec. We were pretty much willing to do anything, to be honest. When you're 20 years old, no experience, you just want to exist. You just want to take part in the business world, and we were willing to do what it takes to have some gigs and to be working on stuff.
Yeah, I know what that's like. You do whatever you can in the early days.
Yeah, really. And we were so cheap in terms of how we were charging. It's like I don't know, we didn't care about the money. We just wanted to build a company, and we wanted to get the ball rolling. And at the time, his name was Luc Landreville, decided to give us our first chance and give us our first project. And from there, GSoft became a pretty successful service company based in Montreal. We were doing pretty cool stuff, to be honest. I mean, we started with the boring stuff, but over time, we really work on great stuff. And after a few years, we knew that building products was something we wanted to do, but we weren't sure what to build. So the service side of the company was kind of a good way to start, learn, be out there, understand what's going on in the market, be next to our customers, and see what's really going on in the workplaces out there. And by being in the workplaces, we kind of learned like what were the issues, what were the problems to solve. And one day, Sebastian came back at the office he was doing a lot of consulting gigs. He came back and like, Simon, I was looking at a vendor who was doing a presentation at the customer site, and he told me like, I think we could do a better job at doing like pretty much what they're trying to do, but with our own spin. And we were back in the days, we were working a lot with a technology called Microsoft SharePoint.
Yes,
right now
SharePoint.
we Microsoft Office 365, which is kind of a leading like productivity tool from Microsoft.
Yep.
Back in the days, we used to call it SharePoint, and decided to build a product to help customers migrate all their content from one version to another of SharePoint.
I think a lot of people know SharePoint.
Yeah, it's like, even if you think you're not using it, I'm pretty sure you're using it.
Somewhere.
It's everywhere.
It's floating around.
So we've built a product, a very niche product, like focus on helping customers move their information to Microsoft SharePoint. And over a few years, we became one of the leading products to help companies modernize with the new productivity tools that Microsoft is offering.
Yeah.
So we're helping thousands and thousands of companies use the most modern tools to work and collaborate in their company.
How many employees do you guys have now?
We're close to 500 people.
Wow.
So we started, we were 3, now we're 500. From 2006 to 2009, a service company. From 2009 till now, we started to be a product company. few years later, around 2013, we decided to build a product that we call Office Vibe.
I remember Office Vibe. I think actually somebody reached out to me from Office Vibe years ago. So it's a small world. Today's episode is sponsored by my friends at Workleap. This is a company that I've known for a couple years, and they're doing some really amazing work. If you've ever dreamed of building high-performing, engaged teams in just a few days, that's exactly the kind of work, that's exactly the kind of dream that Workleap Office Vibe can turn into reality. And no, it's not a genie out of a lamp service provider, but it offers a set of simple engagement, recognition, and performance management tools. As a business leader, your to-do list is probably quite long, but Workleap Office Vibe is not here to add to it, but to scratch some of those goals off, like enabling your HR team to keep up with their managers to instantly act on engaged insights, or fueling meaningful peer recognition, and even driving continuous performance management. If you want to learn more, then head over to workleap.com/office vibe. That's workleap.com/office vibe. If you want a direct introduction to Workleap, then just email me, jacob@thefutureorganization.com, and I will connect you with them.
Back in the days, I don't know, you probably remember, and still the case today for a lot of people, but annual surveys, employee surveys,
Yeah.
were done once a year. And by the time you get the results and you can kind of think about what's going on with the results, it's already, you're a year later.
Right.
So there's no kind of, there's nothing really happening with those surveys. And so back in the days, we decided to kind of reinvent what it means to do annual surveys. And we transformed them into like weekly pulse surveys.
Okay.
Now it's used pretty much everywhere, but we were one of the first product out there doing that, and it became a massive success that we know today. And we started as an engagement tool, and now we're doing performance management,
Yeah, very
OKRs, recognition. So it's much broader now.
Are you?
And now the company's focused. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Company's focused on.
Yeah, and now it's. We used to be called Gsoft. We had like different products, and now we renamed the company to Workleap. It's a company, it's the platform, and all the products are kind of verticals inside the platform. So we're really doing a big transformation where we're bringing all the products that we have into a single experience, and the focus now is really to enable people to work at their best.
Yeah.
And the focus is really on the employee experience. We believe that. There's companies, even if we talk a lot about AI and technology, like companies are still very people company.
They are,
like,
yeah.
You need people to be engaged and perform if you want your business to be successful. And if you want the people to be successful in their job, you need to create the right experience. And this is what we're focusing on right now. We're building multiple products.
Yeah, I have quite a few questions for you on the employee experience side. But actually, before we get into that, I'm curious, is it true? Are you a fully remote company, or do you guys have offices?
Yeah. 2 months before the pandemic, we were opening our massive 100,000 square feet office in Montreal. It was like, that was our next 10, 15 years, potential of 600 people within the same office with that new space. And then the pandemic hit. Like everyone, we became remote, like forced to be remote.
Yep.
And a few months after that, we made a decision to become a distributed company. So it's pretty much a synonym of remote. But yeah, we're across Canada, and now we just acquire a company in the United States. So we have employees now that are in 18 states.
Wow.
In the US.
So I'm really curious about this because I get into different debates, arguments with people all the time about this. So are most of your employees, are they working from their homes? Are they working in different satellite offices? Do you have any offices where employees come together, or is everybody just kind of in their bedrooms, their kitchens, and their living rooms?
We kept the office. I mean, we were kind of, we had to keep it because we signed a lease for a 10 years lease. So, but we kept the office for people around Montreal.
Okay.
We're also using it when 3 times a year we're bringing the whole company together to work on I mean connections, strategy, and really try to bring people closer to each other. But in the day to day, we're all remote. Some people are working in some fancy location next to the beach because we're allowing people to kind of go outside the country for 6 months. So there's a few people using that benefit to kind of just improve their like less like because we're in Montreal. There's a lot of snow during the winter, so some people kind of enjoy the sun. But I would say that most people are working from their home, and yeah, for sure, there's some people going in coffee shop. Some people in Montreal are going to the office maybe once or twice a week, but most people are just working from their home.
So I'm really curious about that because I'm a big believer in flexible work arrangements. And when I talk about flexible work arrangements, for me, that usually means, you know, maybe you come into the office 2-3 times a week. And I know there are some companies that are mostly remote like yours. I think you have around 500 employees. What are the challenges that you find with that? Like, how do you scale? How do you collaborate? I mean, I know you get together periodically throughout the year, but there's a lot of organizations that are saying we need employees back to the office more frequently. Wayfair, actually, fairly recently, they laid off 13% of their workforce, and the majority of the people that they laid off were remote workers because they made a preference for getting employees together to collaborate, to innovate, to brainstorm ideas. How do you make sure that even in a remote environment, you're still able to get these things done? Because there's, as I'm sure you know, a big debate in this space. Do we need offices? Like, how do you guys think through that?
It's a good question. I think we're all asking ourselves the same questions in the last few years. I think it starts with it's a challenge, and the big kind of let's bring back everyone is I think you have to build trust.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is like I'm not too sure if people are actually working, so maybe I'll feel better if I know they are in the office, and they will try to convince themselves that it's more productive, more creative, and more. And I think it's debatable. I think there's good arguments to say that it's maybe more, but I think it really depends on the people you're hiring, the type of environment you're working in. So we on our side, from my experience with that big massive office with all the perks you can think of, you know, typical tech company with all the crazy stuff in the office, at some point there was so much noise in that office, noise like distractions. I don't understand how we were able to build any value in that type of environment. So the COVID-19 with the pandemic and forced to be remote kind of forced us as a company to reevaluate what it means to be productive at work, and how can we make sure that we stay competitive in the market, because competitors are not stopping. Like as a company, we cannot just feel like we're working. We need to be building stuff. So for us, it was a very positive thing to get back home and kind of change how we collaborate together, how we communicate. And it was kind of a big reset of how we were working as a company. And I gotta say, I've never worked as hard as in the last few years. And I've never had such a great balance in my life. I was able to see my kids grow up next to me. Like I've seen my kids more than I think my parents were able to see me when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I've never worked that hard. So I gotta say, for us, it was a good thing. I think right now it's more like it's a question of balance. I think it's fine to have people in the office, at least make people kind of connect with each other. And I know being remote makes it more difficult. It's obvious. It's you're not in the same location. So, and if you want to be a good team, for sure you need to build those connections. And it's the reason why we decided to bring everyone in the office a few times a year and really take that time to create like more intentional moment where we can kind of enjoy being together. back a few before the pandemic, we were all in the same office, but we were not seeing each other. We were walking past each other, not looking at each other because we were taking that for granted. So right now, I feel like the fact that now it's more intentional, more organized,
Yeah.
I think we're benefiting way more from those moments than we used to do when we were always together in the same office. So I could argue that we're creating more connections right now, if
Yeah.
you're willing to take the time for it, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of the research, and there was actually an article that came out fairly recently on Axios, where they were talking about does working from home boost productivity? And they highlighted a couple of papers on there. One of the papers, I think, was from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and they said that working from home, there's no change in productivity. I had Dr. Nicholas Bloom from Stanford on the podcast, and I think he said there is some boost in productivity if you have flexible work versus, no, I think the research was if you have flexible work, you have the same level of productivity as if you're always in the office. And I believe it was if you're fully remote all the time, then I think the productivity went down a little bit. And somebody can fact check me on that, but I believe that's what it was. But then the two other studies in Axios, one said that one increases productivity when employees are remote, but it decreases things like mentorship. And so I think there's this big balance between, do you want productivity or do you want, like leadership development and coaching and growth, right? Because I can imagine productivity, like just getting stuff done, I think is definitely easier in a remote environment. Like if I had to go to an office and commute and see people all the time, and if I had just a list of things that I needed to get done, I would get them done way quicker at home without any distractions, with headphones on, just focused. But for example, let's say I worked for you and I wanted to learn from you. I wanted you to coach me. I wanted to become a leader in the company. I wanted to focus on my executive presence, my leadership development. I wanted to learn how to do strategic thinking better, how to create better products. It seems like in those types of areas that are more focused on growth and innovation, maybe that's where the in-person is better and more effective versus productivity, which is stuff that you can do at home. I mean, I don't know if you would agree with that, but I'm curious how you balance those things between productivity versus thinking big picture, innovation, leadership development, things of that nature.
Yeah, and everything is in everything at some point. So you kind of need all these things to kind of make the whole thing work. And I'm totally aligned with what you're saying, and that. But I could say that when we were all in the office, like, yeah, you can maybe meet someone by accident, like at the coffee station, or there's potential for that. But there's also a good chance that you'll never spend time with most people that are physically in the same office with you. And a lot of those people could help you on many, many things to develop your career. And so what you're mentioning right now makes me think of the stuff we're working on right now at Workleap in terms of bringing let's say, for example, we have a module, like a product in Workleap called Skills. And the goal was how could we surface what people are good at? Because most of the time we're not aware of that.
Yeah.
We're aware of what our colleague sitting next to us is maybe good at, but the other colleague that is far away, you're not going to know, like, that person used to be a developer and now is a project manager. And like, there's a lot of stuff that are hidden behind each person in your company. And being physically in the same office is not increasing the chance that you'll benefit from that talent to be shared. So I think that my answer to that is technology, the stuff that we are building and many players are building right now, I think it's going to improve and fix what was kind of got worse because of the distance that remote is bringing. But yeah, I agree. Like, in terms of productivity, sitting in your office alone, focus with your music and just like concentration, 100%. If you have the discipline for it, that's a very important thing.
Yeah, that's another point, right? Yeah, you got to have the discipline for it because not everybody is able to do that.
But think of the what we're seeing like in our office, and I spoke to many people. A lot of the younger employees want to be in the office.
Interesting.
Because this is where you're kind of, we're seeing a lot of, like for us is, this is where you start your career. This is
Yeah.
where you start your life. This is where you'll maybe meet your next best friend, maybe your wife, your husband. Like it's like work, like takes a huge part of our life. And I'm kind of, I can appreciate the time I spend in the office, the people I've met. And so as a young person, I can understand that you want to have those connections and maybe you can find them somewhere else. But how do you make sure, in terms of sharing the knowledge, how do you make sure that the senior people, these are people with families, more like they're more like their life is more like in order. I'm not sure what's the right way to say it, but so they can enjoy the flexibility and they don't really feel like the need to be at the
Yeah.
next happy hour because it's like been there, done that, and it doesn't make you a bad employee. It's just like I'm somewhere else in my life. But how do you make sure that that person can share its experience with the younger employee who's like, who's going to help me grow in my career? So I think there's a lot of things to be built around not, let's not try to recreate what we used to have because it's not coming back. Maybe a little bit, but it's not coming back. So there's other ways we can create those connections and probably do a better job than just randomly expect that things will happen in the office physically.
It's interesting that the younger employees are wanting to come back to the office more often. I totally agree. I mean, when I was back when I had a normal full-time job, I found a lot of value out of being in the office. I mean, there was of course things I didn't like. I didn't like the commute. That drove me nuts. I didn't like having to spend money on gas. I mean, there were a lot of issues that I didn't like. The time that I spent. But I did learn an enormous amount from spending time in the office where I would see my leaders, where I could talk to my leaders, where I could grab casual coffees with people. So it's very interesting that the younger generation, at least in your company, is wanting to see more of that, which I think is a good thing. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No. It's
I
more
wanted
knowledge.
to, yeah, I wanted to shift gears quickly to talk about employee experience. So I don't think I've shared this yet, but I just signed the contract fairly recently with my publisher to do an updated version of my book, The Employee Experience Advantage, which came out in 2017 now, around almost half a decade ago, or more than half a decade ago. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of really cool research and exploration on that in the coming months. And so I was really curious to get your thoughts on what are the top trends that you're seeing when it comes to employee experience? You obviously have a lot of customers around the world. What are you seeing as far as things that they're paying attention to, that they're trying to do? What's happening in the employee experience world from your perspective?
I think there's when we think about employee experience, I think there's there's a tendency to associate that with HR. It's
Yeah.
like
Yep.
it's like the HR stuff.
Yep.
Not sure why. Probably because there's the word employee. So I like to call it work experience. Sometimes it makes it less like, oh, it's HR. HR will take care of that. So I like to look at employee experience as something that is broader and more like, how can we enable people to work at their best so they can create value, exceptional value for the company, so the company can be successful. And so in terms of when you think about it that way, I think there's a huge piece that is missing right now in the conversation, and it's around the technology. We talk a lot about the technology for the people process. So Office Vibe that we built at Workleap is kind of it's a tech supporting employee engagement. So we're measuring engagement, so tech supporting people process. But there's also the tech enabling people to be productive. So if you think about these massive platforms that we're using in our day to day, like if you're a company with the Microsoft Office 365, Microsoft 365, your day will start with maybe a conversation on Teams. You'll look at your calendar, you'll look at your emails, you'll probably take some note in OneNote, and you'll plan your day with Planner, and so most of my experience is driven is happening through these platforms. And this is where work gets done. And this is where the experience can be kind of like optimized and influenced. And like this is where there's a lot of work to be done so people can really work at their best. So I like to look at I mean, we have products around engagement, performance, training, skills. So a lot of what we associate with HR, but I like the other side of it, which is more the technology side, the IT side. It's more like the behind the scene team that it's like we kind of expect it, but we're not really talking about it. So, and right now with what's going on with generative AI, the technology is taking more and more place in our life. Like, I mean, like you think of ChatGPT or Copilot or a bunch of products out there. They're all kind of becoming like they're kind of our buddy at work. Like you can ask them questions.
I use them all the time, even in the work that I do. I always have it open.
So if you want these amazing capabilities to be effective and really bring value in people's life at work, there's going to be a lot of like work to make sure they're well supported. People are trained on them to make sure they have the right permissions, like make sure that there's no leak. So there's a lot of IT stuff involved, and yeah. So it's more like the bigger picture of employee experience. And at the end of the day, it's like employee experience is not about putting smiles on people's face.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Someday you'll be smiling and someday you'll be mad for whatever reason. It could be personal, but employee experience isn't about like making sure people are not complaining at work. Maybe there's a part of it that is making sure people are comfortable and they have what they need. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's the optimal experience I can provide to my team, my employees, the workers, so they really can work at their best. And and if you're able to kind of do it really well to your 500 employees or 1,000 or 2,000, this is where amazing things can happen.
WorkLeap Office Vibe isn't words, 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 and no actions. Instead, it's built to be simple to use, delightful to look at, and actionable from the get-go. Wouldn't it be amazing if all software was like that? If you need proof, say no more. Their automated and customizable pulse surveys give HR and managers real-time insights into their team's engagement, letting them know clearly what's working and what's not. So when your HR and managers team up, they know what to tackle. You want more proof and want to see what that's like? Then head over to workleap.com/office vibe. That's workleap.com/office vibe. If you want a direct introduction to WorkLeap, then just email me, jacob@thefutureorganization.com, and I will connect you with them. What are the trends that you're looking at though? So, I mean, at least for me, when I talk about employee experience, I talk about it as culture, technology, and physical space. Like those are the three elements that organizations can control and design for. So culture, of course, a big one, technology, space, another one as well. But when you look at just kind of broader trends, and I think you mentioned generative AI, things like ChatGPT is one huge trend. What are some of the other trends that you're paying attention? Yeah. What are some of the other trends that you're paying attention to broadly in the employee experience world that maybe sit outside of technology?
Yeah. So Gen AI and the tooling at work to support workers in their experience. You can think, I would say that another one that is taking a lot of my attention in the last few months, few years is the skills. Like there's a kind of a skill-based approach, and no one really cracked the code yet. But it starts from the idea that we're looking at a company in a very structured way, and which is it's fine. Like I mean, you have a structure, you have teams, but at the end of the day, you're trying to build maybe a product, provide a service, and the structure is supposed to support that. And I think there's a more fluid structure that could kind of allow companies to do more with less, and not less in the sense like trying to save money. It's more like available talent is limited, and sometimes you cannot just hire just more people because you want to do more. Most of the time, companies have the skills for a lot of things they want to accomplish, but they end up hiring a consultant because they're not even aware that if you match that person with that person, I think there's something to be made.
Yeah,
And
skills.
they don't have the tools for it. And
Yeah. One of the things that I always say are skills are greater than jobs. Because traditionally, if you look at most people's career path, and this was the career path I was in, right? I was in marketing many, many years ago. If you start off in marketing, you only have one career path: marketing, marketing manager, senior marketing manager, director, VP, and you have to just climb that marketing ladder. And I think what we're starting to see more of today is that the skills that you have are more valuable than the job that you have. So for example, if you were to look at the skills that somebody in marketing might have, communication, project management, collaboration, what you start to do is you start to see, well, where else can those skills be applied and how can we enhance those skills? And I think now you see people are able to create more of their own career ladder. So somebody that started off in marketing can now maybe be in HR or customer experience. And I love this new emphasis and focus on skills instead of just on the job that you have, because ultimately I think that's what we should be focusing on is are those skills. And I think it's also a big challenge for a lot of companies too, because it changes the traditional corporate ladder that we're all used to.
Yeah, and it's also kind of, I mean, if you're just looking at job titles, it's easier to kind of, it's easier to look at. Like it's less like noisy. But if you're expanding everyone's job title into what are the skills behind that job title, and what are the adjacent skills from that person coming from another role, or maybe like a passion in his personal life, or it creates like an abundance of skills to kind of like just for one person could be like hundreds of skills. So let's say you have 1,000 employees, it becomes complex very quickly. But if you're able to manage that complexity and get the most out of the skills that is available in this, like in the company, I think a company can accomplish way, way, way more. And we need to get there, because at the end of the day, there's not enough talent for what most companies are trying to accomplish. We're all always trying to find the best talent out there. It's a war on talent, especially in tech. So it's kind of it's not even just like change the corporate ladder to like for sure, but I don't even like it. It's not even obvious for companies what are the potential, like what are all the options available for that person. Because if you're a manager managing 10 people, like you have to think for every person. Like you have to be a very creative manager to be able to understand the specific jobs and all the possibilities. But now with technology, there's some really, really cool stuff that can be done. And that's the kind of thing we like to work on at Workleap. Another trend, like it's an obvious one, but hybrid work, like a big trend right now. And I don't think we've cracked the code either. Like I'm talking to plenty of company leaders. They still wonder how am I gonna create that culture if people are just in their own house working, and a lot of them are they're trying to recreate what they had before. And I'm like, stop thinking about what you had before. It's long gone. Now you have to think what you can build in the future. And some things you will lose, some you will win. There's always pros and cons in whatever decisions and change you're making. And I think right now there's potential for more pros than cons, but you have to give up on, but when we used to do the happy hours on Teams during the pandemic, and it's like, we had the Christmas party on Teams, plenty of companies did that. Like, it doesn't work. Don't try to recreate what you had just because recreate what you have with technology is kind of can work sometimes, but most of the time I don't think it will work. I think we need to kind of rethink and accept that we will stop doing some few things, but we can start doing other things.
Okay, so we have generative AI, we have flexible work, we talked about skills and jobs. Any other trend? Did we talk about 3, or was there a 4th one in there?
Talk about the tooling and technology as part of employee experience.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure if we call it a trend, but it's more like another perspective on the concept.
Anything else that jumps to mind for you as far as employee experience trends, or are those the main ones that you're focusing on?
I don't know. Let me think about it. Like, do you have some in mind that we can talk about them?
Well, I mean, for me, I think I guess they can fall under employee experience, but they're maybe a little bit broader as far as work trends. I think one of the things that's happening with DEI now is very interesting, where you see some people that are fighting against DEI initiatives and some people are for it, and it's becoming very political and polarized. And I think just a lot of people get very confused with what DEI means. I think another one is just broadly speaking around work ethic. Work ethic, being able to talk about hard work, being able to talk about making sacrifices. I feel, at least from what I've seen, in some instances, saying hard work is almost becoming like a bad word in some companies, or telling people to make some sort of a sacrifice is in some instances being viewed as kind of a negative. So I don't know. I feel like just our general perception of how we're thinking about work is changing, and we're maybe forgetting the fundamental relationship between an employee and employers. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate and understand what that relationship is meant to be for, and sometimes we take it for granted. Because, I mean, to me, when I look at the very basic relationship between an employee and an employer, is an employer says, I need help with something. I need somebody who can do this job. And an employee or a candidate says, I can do that job and I'm good at it. And then you get hired and you're doing that job. And we forget that what happens is that a company sells whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's a product or a service. And so if they pay you a certain salary, a certain hourly wage, it only makes sense for the company if they are able to make money on what you are providing. So if you charge, for example, $50 an hour, and a company is only able to sell what you're offering for $30 an hour, they end up losing money. And so we forget that the relationship still comes down to, is the company able to take it, leverage what you're able to create and build and turn it into something more valuable and more profitable? And by the way, they also have to pay you benefits, 401k, they're paying for the space, they're doing a lot of different things for you. And so I feel like we forget that that's the very basic kind of core relationship between an employee and an organization. And we've come a long way over the past few decades since just that fundamental relationship. I mean, as you said, you used to have an office where you had all these crazy perks. And now a company is not just a company, but they are your financial advisor. They take care of your health and well-being. They, like you said, you have the program where you can work 6 months out of the year in different parts of the world. So I think the way that we even define a company, the way that we define work is fundamentally different. But I don't think it's a bad thing for us to remember the core relationship between an employee and an employer. And at least to me, sometimes it feels like when we forget that, we take advantage of it and we ask for more, right? So one of the things that I've talked about many times on this podcast that I still think is crazy is that a lot of people will ask for more money, right? They want to make more than their boss's boss. They want equity in the business. They want the perks. They want the benefits. And then on top of all of that, they say, I don't even want to show up to the office anymore. And when a lot of people say that, I think they forget about what the relationship is between an employee and employer. So I think one of the big trends that we'll probably see over the coming months and years, probably what we're seeing with Wayfair, is kind of not renegotiating, but reminding people about what the purpose is of an organization, the role that an employee has, and what that relationship looks like. Because to me, it almost seems like we're, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but it seems like we're mixing things up a little bit, right? Like it's just all thrown in there together. And that makes it very, very hard, I think, to run a business for a lot of leaders out there. Like it makes it very hard for it to become sustainable.
I'm completely aligned with you. And I think we, as business leaders, we've contributed to that a little bit in how we kind of reacted to a crazy market.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible, like many other company owners, and I think it's the effect of the last decade of zero interest rate, where endless money supply in the system, and it created conditions where these things can have. It can always happen. I think it was just like it get to a point where it didn't really compute anymore. And so, yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's there's also another thing where, again, guilty of it. Like we used to call us a family at Workleap. Like back in the days when we were called GSoft, and it was the GSoft family. And when you're using those words, you're creating an environment where it's no longer like a work relationship. Like it's like, hey, we're family. So there's no it's like we're in this together forever. Like there's almost like you can't fire someone when it's your brother or sister. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So and we've heard that a lot in the conversation around work. And but yeah, I think right now the not sure if it's an economic crisis, but the downturn that we've experienced in the last 2 years, I think it's bringing back a balance that I think it will hurt at first, because when you're going from the extreme to the other side, like for sure it's gonna hurt on the short term, but I think it's gonna bring us, I think, in a more like balanced relationship. And I think we're getting back where we're respecting money way more as a company.
Respecting money, respecting a job, respecting hard work. You know, a lot of people act as if having a job is a right, and I view it as a privilege. Well, so let me rephrase that. I think the opportunity to have a job is a right. Like everybody should have the opportunity to be employed. But there isn't a company out there that just owes you a job. Like you can't just walk into a company and say, I'm owed a job here. You still have to compete for the job. You still have to display the skills that you have for the job. You still have to learn and develop. You still have to show up to work willing to contribute. You still have to show up to work willing to make the occasional sacrifices and go above and beyond. You still have to do all these things. You can't just say, now that I got hired by this company, I can just take it easy and do whatever I want, and this company owes it to me to have this job. That's not how it works. And I think to your point, we're forgetting to respect that it is a privilege that if you work for an organization, and it's not to say that the organization has the right to treat you poorly and make you work 100 hours a week and not pay you well. I'm not talking about that. Assuming you are being treated fairly and well, which I think a lot of organizations are doing a much better job at, you still as an employee have accountability to your work, to your job, to your people, to your leaders, to show up, to contribute ideas. And I don't know what happened over the past few years, but to your point, we're forgetting to respect the job, to respect money, to respect our organizations, to respect the relationship that we have, and to acknowledge that nobody in this world owes us anything, and we need to be the best versions of ourselves whenever we show up to work each day and not just try to extract as much as we can.
Well, I have high hopes on the whole market getting back in a more balanced position right now, and I think it's just going to creates like a more healthy relationship between every parties, and it's good for everyone. Like you cannot take your employees for granted, but you cannot take your employers for granted either. So it's more like people
Both
should
ways.
complete
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
job, show skills, work on their skills, get trained. Like go to an interview and know that there's a good chance I'm not gonna have it. So let's try to kill it. Like I'm gonna, and I think it makes it. I mean, it's more like satisfying when you get like when you're succeeding and when you're working hard on things. And I'm not shy to say work hard. Honestly, it's not. I've never. I think a few years ago I was not saying performance. There was some kind of pressure around me, like where performance felt like that's so old school. Like perform, like why? And now I'm like extremely like I have no problem saying like performance is a good thing and it's fun to
Yes.
be performant.
Yes.
It's fun to win. It's fun to do things that succeed in the marketplace. Like it's the building a great product that customers are willing to pay for. They picked your product over other products.
Yeah.
Like you need to work hard to make that happen. And when it happens, whew, feels good. It feels good
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that mentality. I wish more leaders would be comfortable going in front of their teams and say, you should work hard. You should make the occasional sacrifice. That's okay. And I'm not going to be scared to talk about it. And I think to your point, so that's when we were talking about employee experience trends. I think that's a big one that hopefully we'll kind of get back to a little bit. And I'm sure I'll probably get maybe some angry emails from people watching this that are saying, Jacob, what the hell are you talking about? But you know what? I'm happy to have those debates and those conversations. I have those a lot on LinkedIn. And I hope we kind of get back to that hard work and work ethic.
No, but think about it like in terms of like a company who wants to succeed. Like you need the best ideas, you need the best execution, you need the right collaboration between people. Like there's still like you need to treat your people well to get that to happen. Like it's like it's the cost of doing business, and at the same time, it's fun to create that. Like it's fun to create a great workplace. Like we've been doing that for the last 18 years, but when we talk about employee experience, it's not just like I said before. It's not about putting smiles on everyone's face every day. It's not that pressure. Like it's okay if the experience is sometimes a little bit more boring, or like what's optimal for your business to succeed. And if you're a smart business person, you better make sure that people want to come to work in your company. And so at the end of the day, you cannot treat people badly if you want to succeed. It's very hard to make it happen that way.
Why do you, as a business leader, need Workleap Office Vibe? It's not just about measuring engagement. It's also about improving recognition and performance management. Employees receive prompts that invite them to use Good Vibes, a feel-good feature that can be used to celebrate the little victories and big wins in a personalized and meaningful way. For performance management, it serves as a simple and effective tool for a frictionless shift to an automated and continuous process. This is just the tip of the iceberg of positive change that Workleap Office Vibe can affect on your business. Visit workleap.com/office vibe and start creating high-performing, engaged teams in days, not months. Again, that's workleap.com/office vibe. And if you want a direct introduction to them, just email me, jacob@thefutureorganization.com. To me, it's very much like being in a relationship, right? I mean, a lot of people who are listening and watching to this are in a relationship or have been in one, and no relationship is perfect. Sometimes you go on vacations together and you have the best time of your life and you have a smile on your face 24/7, but sometimes you get in an argument. Sometimes you go through difficult financial times. Sometimes, you argue about things. It doesn't mean that's like, okay, we can't be together anymore because we had a little argument. Same thing is true at work. There will be times when you show up to work and you have an amazing time and you had a great project and you accomplished a lot and you got recognized, but you're also going to have times where you have to do boring work, mundane work, things that you don't want to do and it feels tedious. That doesn't mean that those are bad things, right? That's just part of the journey of work. And I feel like sometimes we're very focused on trying to create this Pinocchio's island where we just want everybody to be happy all the time and smile all the time. And how are you feeling? And how are you doing? And is everything okay? And not to say that some of those things are invalid, but we still need to remember that just because you have a tough time, just because you have a difficult relationship doesn't automatically mean that you hate your job, that the company is terrible. And similarly, you were talking about taking advantage, right? I feel like a lot of the conversation has always been on organizations taking advantage of employees. But we also forget that sometimes employees can also take advantage of the organization. And that mutual balance, I think, is very, very important to have. So I hope that, like you, that over the coming months and years, we'll see more of that rebalance and focus and effort going forward. Because I mean, I can only imagine how hard, for example, when you were creating your company, how many hours you worked. The first employees at Workleap. You guys weren't probably working 5-6 hours a day. You probably weren't making much money. You weren't thinking like, okay, it's 4 o'clock, I'm done for the day. I mean, you probably were working like crazy. And it was fun. It was enjoyable. I think it's okay to share some of those stories. One last question I wanted to wrap up on before we end is really around, well, I guess we have a few different themes. Why don't we go to leadership? So for you, for leadership, and I'm curious about this because there are a lot of leaders out there who get put into positions where they're responsible for others, but they never had any formal leadership training, and they just have to figure it out on their own. How did you figure out how to lead? And what advice do you have for other leaders out there where maybe their company isn't giving them the tools and resources for training? What do they do? How do they figure out how to be good leaders?
Yeah, it's a good one, but you're right. I've never really I've learned by breaking my nose on walls at different time of our journey. But I think what makes my strength as a leader, I think there's a humble side that is it comes very natural to me. It's just me, Simon. I'm not trying to play the business person. I'm really kind of leading with my heart, and it really served me well over the years. I mean, playing the business person is something like there's a lot of people acting as business person,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of it's hard to fake something because you feel like it's the right play to do because you're now, but I've stayed myself for the last 18 years, and when I talk about things, I speak from the heart, and I say the things how I think about those things. I'm not trying to so I think that and I never took anything for granted. It's another thing, like as the business, I led that business like if like we could lose everything tomorrow, and it's like we've been, a lot of people would say that we've been very successful, like bootstrap company, like $150 million of revenue every year, like profitable, 500 people in 100 countries. We have pretty much all the check to say like us, but always felt like we've reached that point. We take nothing for granted. Let's keep building great stuff. Let's keep that passion for building great stuff. So again, it's like I think there's a humble humility,
vulnerability in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a good ingredient to leadership. And then it's like I think something I could have done a better job at is around accountability. I think I've took a lot of things on my shoulders and felt responsible. Like as a CEO, you're kind of responsible for everything, but at the end of the day, being good at making people accountable is an art. It's very tough to do, and have the courage, the tough conversation that needs to happen with those. I think I could have done a better job, and I strongly recommend people to don't fall into the, like, you want to make sure, don't want to hurt anyone, don't want to, like, talk about those things, like, and it's a but it's difficult. It's easier to avoid the conversation, like the tough conversation.
It is.
And talk about everything else. But some of those conversations can really change the course of a company. And if you don't have it, like there's a cost there.
I love that. I think that's great advice for people. It seems like you just have to do. You will make mistakes. Like you said, you're going to smack your nose into the wall. You'll get hurt a few times. You'll get smacked around a little bit. But I think that's how the best leaders learn to lead. You know, talk to people out there, read books, do what you got to do. But ultimately, learn and lead by doing, I think, is the best piece of advice.
And another thing is the I think we kept that, that when you're a kid, like you're more like you're doing everything for the first time.
Yeah, and curiosity.
Yeah, but sometimes it brings, like, you try things that are just bringing you like nowhere. Like you're willing to go in those kind of because experience is kind of a double-edged word. Like sometimes experience makes you not do things that you feel won't work because you've done it 10 years ago. But sometimes you need to get back there. So when you're young, when I was 20 years old, didn't see anything in my life, I was willing to go in pretty much any direction just to test what's going on there. And I try to keep that in my way of running the business. Like I use my experience, but I'm willing to retry things that maybe didn't try 10 years ago because the world is changing. And so there's and try to keep it fun, crazy, a little bit, bring some little spice to everything you do. Like I like that. It's a business, but at the end of the day, like there's a way to make it fun, whatever the business you're in. Like, sometimes we're too serious about it. Like it's our life. Like
gotta enjoy yourself a little bit. Yeah. Simon, where can people go to learn more about you and Workleap? Anything that you want to mention for people to check out?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at any time. I do my best to answer questions. You can look at workleap.com. We're going to be launching the platform in just a few weeks. So I'll take a look at it and reach out if you want to talk about the employee experience and if you want to talk about business. I'm always willing to help whoever is looking for some help.
Sounds good. Simon, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. My guest again, Simon De Baene. He's the co-founder and CEO at Workleap. Check them out. They're doing some pretty cool stuff, and I will see all of you next week. Thanks everyone for tuning into my conversation with Simon De Baene. I encourage you to join our Substack community, over 40,000 members strong. Go to greatleadership.substack.com/GL podcast if you want to get 20% off of your Substack subscription. And it's basically an email platform where I send out my latest thinking, my best content. Everything's delivered to your inbox, nothing you need to do on your end. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to somebody who you would like to see become a better leader. And if you're interested in learning more about leading with vulnerability, my brand new book, you can head to leadwithvulnerability.com. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you next week.